If you find yourself with a camera in your hand and you want to learn how to use it, please subscribe to this channel, like the videos, comment down below what you would like to learn more about. Hi Photos subscribers. Today we are talking about how to get or achieve a black background, nearly completely dark, or at least not getting any light, residual light from your lights that are lighting your subject or your client. So let's talk about some of the basics and the theory of your studio setup. Wherever your camera is placed, do a little diagram here, your camera being over here, then you have a light set up at about a 45-degree angle, so the same amount of feet it is in front of your camera should also be the same number of feet it is out to the side of your camera. Does that make sense? That's what 45 degrees is. The equal number distance in front of is also to the side of. So if you have two 45-degree lights in front of your camera pointing at your client, it'll create this basically diamond shape. So I'm suggesting here by this drawing, just throwing out numbers, your studio does not have to be this large, but the ratios are kind of there important. If from your camera right up here, this measurement out here to your client is about 10 foot. So in that regard, the light is generally positioned between the camera and the client equally. So it's equal distant, just positioned between the camera and the client. So then it would be 5 foot out from the camera, that central line between the camera and the client. So if you have a second light set up at a 45 degree, it'll be 5 foot on the opposite side of your camera. Now, that light's your client, assuming that's the only two that you have. If you have one over top, it'll be slightly behind your client as a quote-unquote hair light. It'll be slightly, it won't be directly over your client. It may be slightly behind, it may be slightly in front of, depending on your style. But if you want to get the silhouette, the edge of the hair, then you're going to want it slightly behind and pointing forward just a little bit on your client, so it gets the lights the edges of their clothing, their hair, and that gets you the hair light, or some call it a rim light. So that puts you from your camera to your client about 10 foot. Now, to make sure that you're not getting any, I'm going to call it light splashing, okay? So that you don't get any light fall off on the background or splashing light on your background, you're going to want to make sure to pull that background far enough away. And this is what I've also heard called separation. Obviously, it's kind of simple. It's true. You want to have enough space between your client and the background that there's not really any light showing to be illuminating your background. Now, I have a sweep drawn here. You don't have to have a sweep, because wherever your camera is and your focal length may only catch that much. So you really only need that much, somewhere between, if your client's sitting down, assuming they're, say, an average height 5'6" to 5'10", 5'11", then you may only need like 7 foot high of a background to 2.5 or 3 foot. Now, I encourage you to buy more background than you need, just so that if you do need to zoom out or move your camera back, you have background to work with. That 2.5 foot to 7 foot or so would only be a maximum of 5 foot, 4.5 to 5 foot. Again, I've found most backgrounds that are 5 foot tall to be limiting a little bit. I prefer something larger, something maybe more along the lines of 8 or 10 foot. That would get me from about 9 foot off the ground if I had a 10 foot background to a 1 foot drag on the floor. That's not a bad idea, especially if you're trying to do a portrait of someone who's standing. They can be a little bit closer to the background, just making sure that your lights are angled away from your background so that you don't have any light fall off that's splashing onto your background. So that's really the important thing of achieving a black background. The other thing, obviously, if you want a black background, you're going to need a black material, black paper. The background itself, the color of it needs to be black. And that way, with all the light fall off that is lighting your client, not spilling over onto your background, you get that nice black, dark, no detail background and get that contrast of your client and how you're shooting them and lighting them being the main focus. So that's really creating contrast, lighting, and your photography composition all in one because of how you light your client, making sure that your lights aren't shining back to your background, they are directed to your client, that your lights are not bright enough or direct enough to be shining on your background and your client at the same time. So those are some very quick, simple tips really on lighting and how that is affecting and how you can achieve a black background, completely dark, no detail, and drawing that attention to your client in every way possible. We can do some further videos on an interesting background such as a dark gray and lighting to a bright white behind your client to add extra visual detail and attention, somewhat like I have here, the white silky kind of fabric I have behind me. By its shadowing and shimmery nature, it has some very bright areas over here, and it goes to a gray behind me. It may allow for some extra edge detail to show on me from light overhead, reflector behind me, the window on this side. But the main importance is that the background is not the same color as I am. So I have a contrast difference. There is some separation so you don't see a shadow. But the other thing is the ambient light is enough to where the light from reflectors can add some detail and bring in a little bit of greater color or contrast and show some of the benefits and details of what you're looking for and how to achieve the exposure, the contrast, the composition, as well as the separation from your background so that you get the color or the detail or the lack of detail of the background as you're looking for. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and give a thumbs up if this video's content has added value to your photography. Leave us a comment below and let us know if something in this video has shown you something that you haven't thought about or didn't know about shooting with backgrounds before, or how to light something effectively, or even figuring out how that light spillover lit your background. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.